You are now tuned in to the GNWY podcast.
What's going on, everybody? This is a new episode of GNWY podcast, and we have an amazing person with us. Her name is Thembi, and I'm going to turn this over to Kelsey because she knows her a lot better and is going to introduce her like crazy. So watch this.
Introduce her like crazy. Thembi Joy.
What's up?
Studio audience, give it up for Thembi. Okay, so we're just going to be talking mental health today. Thembi has some tips and tricks she's learned along the way she's going to share with us. So, I don't know, we rehearsed this, but everything flew out of my brain as soon as we sat down, so that's fine. So, where do we want to begin?
I can just start talking about what life looked like before my diagnosis. So throughout my entire life, I've always been super, super sensitive. And I would say that before knowing that I had a mental illness, my life was just full of highs and lows. Like, I felt really deeply. One moment was super, super happy, super full of energy, super joyful. And another moment I was super, super depressed. And I thought it was normal to have such swift mood changes, but I discovered that that wasn't the case, and I never really thought that I had a problem. I mean, I struggled with depression and anxiety frequently, seasonally, but not to the point to where I felt like I needed to go see someone and talk to someone, and it wasn't until my emotional state began to affect my job that I realized that something was wrong. So, yeah.
So how did you realize that it was like that bad when you got, I'm skipping forward, I'm thinking part of the story. So when you were in your job, what was it like? Oh, this is not like, I actually need help.
Yeah. So I moved last year in August to Tennessee to intern with the church that I was at. And, it was a lot of change, like uprooting my life. I got hired, and then like 3 weeks after that I left. And so change can do a lot to your mental state, your emotional state, your physical state. Right. And so within like a month of being in that job, I like wasn't sleeping very well. I wasn't eating very well. And I was just really, really emotional. Like not sensitive, but like super high, super low one moment to where it began to affect my job performance. And it wasn't until my boss sat me down that I realized that, like, okay, this is a serious issue, because people around me began to notice that I really wasn't stable. And so I had to actually step away from something that I thought that I was supposed to do. And I moved back here, and then I went to go spend a month with my parents, and they arranged for me to talk to a psychiatrist, because they were also worried, because they knew that something was wrong. They didn't even recognize me. And I went and talked to a psychiatrist and realized that I had bipolar. And so that realization, it was super devastating, but at the same time it made so much sense. Yeah. And so, yeah.
In that moment when you got your diagnosis, what was like your initial thought? What were you like, oh snap? Or were you like, oh, this makes so much sense?
Yeah.
Or
as much as
a mixture of everything?
Yeah.
Like, how did that feel?
Yeah, as much as it made so much sense, it honestly felt like a death sentence. Like, I instantly thought that my life was over. I don't know a lot of people in my circle that have bipolar. While it is a very common mood disorder, it's not something that is talked about as much as like depression and anxiety, and how far you are on those two spectrums. And so I thought it was the end. Like, as much as it made sense, and it kind of gave language to just how my entire life was a series of highs and lows, I felt like it was the end for me. And so I was very devastated.
Like, looking back, when you say your entire life, looking back, can you think of like any instances where you were like, oh, I could have probably gotten the diagnosis then? Or do you think it had to get to the point that it got to for you to be able to realize?
I can think of a few moments in time where if I would have leaned into it more, if I wouldn't have been so focused on like getting past it and honestly covering it up, I probably could have gotten this diagnosis earlier. but clinically it shows, and because I began like reading up on like what bipolar is, like all that fun stuff once I got diagnosed. Like if you have any type of like mental illness or mood disorder of any kind, usually you'll be able to see those symptoms a lot more in your early 20s. So it makes sense that it took me moving and being in a completely new environment for all of these symptoms to really come to the surface. And so I think it took things happening the way that it happened for me and others to fully see that there's a problem. So, yeah.
So, post-diagnosis, how are you feeling?
I feel good now.
Like knowing you before knowing you now is like, I mean, you're still you, but it's much more like level and stable. That's for sure.
Yeah. I definitely knowing how I was before and how I am now, like I definitely see a change in how I process things. I'm still sensitive. Like I still have my emotions and stuff. I think a lot of people are afraid of pursuing different avenues like medication and like bi-weekly therapy because they think that stuff's going to numb them or make them feel like inhumane. And honestly, if you are taking medication and you feel like you're not yourself, then you're probably taking the wrong medication or the wrong dosage. But I'm a firm believer in you got to do what you got to do to be healthy. And I definitely can say that I'm much more stable now. And while I still feel very deeply, it's not as swift and the spectrum isn't on two separate ends. Like I feel like I can experience my emotions without being driven by them. And so I feel good.
But you've like had to put in work yourself too. It's not just like meds and better.
Yeah.
Like you have matured a lot, I feel like, through the whole thing too.
Yeah. Something that my therapist told me when I first moved back is that, like you just said, like you have to put in the work and you have to realize that like your health always has to come first above everything that you do. And so moving back here and trying to find work, I realized that I had to find something that wasn't too stressful. I really had to make sure that every day I was taking my medication, and even like my diet had to change a little bit too, because I also wasn't eating very well during that time where I was in Tennessee too, which can just add on to imbalances in your brain and your mood and your emotional state, because we are very affected by the foods that we eat. And so through changing my diet and making sure that I take medication every day, and then also making sure that I'm going to my therapy appointments, and then also like being honest with my support system as well, I was kind of able to figure out like what that new normal is, having a bipolar diagnosis. So
what would you advise, I guess, to someone who is like experiencing these things or thinking, hey, something may be off with me? What would you say to them? First steps, I guess.
Well, I would say the first step is that you got to get real with yourself. I know for me, like I said, for so long, I tried to cover up my symptoms. A part of me thought that it was normal. But
she's an Enneagram 4.
I'm an Enneagram 4, yes. So I thought that this is just how we feel. We feel very deeply, and that's just the way that it is. But while there's nothing wrong with being super sensitive and having emotions, when you're driven by them so much to where it's affecting your job performance and how you interact with people, like that's when things become a problem. And so honestly, I would just get real with yourself and ask yourself the question, like, am I really okay? And even I would go as far as to like ask your coworkers and your friends and your family, like, am I good? And really lean into those honest responses. And then the second thing that I would say is that if you do feel like there's something wrong to where you need to go see a doctor or have a conversation with someone, know that there's no shame in that. Like all of us have stuff. Even if your symptoms are not like super like on the surface, we all struggle with things. And so know that there's no shame in that, and that there's beauty in realizing your flaws, realizing your weaknesses, realizing that you need help and reaching out to get the help that you need. And then if you get a diagnosis like bipolar, or even if, you have anxiety and you realize that you need to be on medication for that, that is not the end. Like I mentioned earlier, I thought that my bipolar diagnosis was a death sentence, and I'm an artist, so I make music. And so I wondered, like, can I still make music? Can I someday still work for a church? And when I began to research bipolar, a lot of artists actually have a bipolar disorder. A lot of people that I look up to. My favorite actress has a bipolar disorder. Winston Churchill had bipolar. And these are all, Kanye West has bipolar. closed on Sunday. And so,
Okay,
like,
Chick-fil-A.
that's what I'm saying. So literally, like, a lot of the people that I looked up, I found also had this mental illness, and they're all still doing incredible things and
Right.
getting the help that they need. And so this is not the end for you. You can bounce back. It's just going to take a little bit of hard work, and also realizing that you matter, your mental health matters, and that you shouldn't sacrifice that for the sake of, you know, wanting to keep your job or wanting to keep up with appearances. I
Right.
know I had to ask myself the question, like, is it worth leaving this internship right now, or should I just stay in this job to prove to everyone that I can do it while, like, mentally deteriorating every day?
Yeah.
And I had to realize that, like, my health in the end matters. And so, honestly, I would just say, for those of you that are kind of questioning whether or not you need to get some help, is I'd get honest with yourself, realize there's no shame in asking for help, and realizing that no matter what, like, this is not the end. But I would argue and say this is the beginning of discovering
Okay, beginning.
truly really discovering, like, who you are and who God has made you to be. So
Okay. Yay. Studio audience. Audience, snap it up. Okay, Susan in the back with the snap. Okay, so you said you're an artist. Like, how
yeah.
have you, like, used that as an outlet, or like what has your diagnosis changed how you use your platform?
Yeah, I think I've always been super honest in, like, my songwriting. Like, a lot of my songs come from really, like, real experiences and stuff, and I think it's challenged me to be even more transparent. Like, a lot of what I did in November when I was with my family and I was freshly diagnosed and on medication for the first time ever, was that I wrote a lot. And so I think it's kind of made me get even more honest with myself and with other people, and I have found that has been an avenue to where I'm able to really express myself when I feel like I can't in any other way.
Yeah.
And so I think there's so much power in the written word, and then when you put that to music, you're actually able to use the experience that you've gone through to give other people language for what they're experiencing. And so I think this diagnosis has made me realize the weight of the gift that I have, and how, you know, it's important to even be more honest. I mean, I look at artists that I look up to that also have bipolar, like Demi Lovato, Kanye West, and they're both very prolific and authentic songwriters and stuff. And I've connected through their music because they've been so real. And so, yeah, it's challenged me to be more honest in what I do.
Thembi Joy music, ladies and gentlemen. Look her up on Spotify,
Please do.
iTunes.
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Everything.
I mean, Apple Music.
Apple Music, yes. I haven't bought a song on iTunes
Untied
in.
my shoe.
Hey, it's all good, you know.
It's fine.
This is real.
This is real.
Real stuff.
I had another question, and then I untied my shoe. I can't remember what it was. Okay, so back to post-diagnosis. So what now? So you said you were just, like, chilling, working on you, all of that.
Yeah.
So what is, like, now, I guess, like, current you?
Yeah.
What is it? How do you feel now? Because you've, like, been on your meds and stuff and all of that, and how are you feeling? What does life look like right now? Futuristic?
Well, like I said before, I definitely feel more balanced. And it's funny because I thought this season of, like, working on me was going to be longer than I expected. And I mean, we should always be working on ourselves no matter where we are, what we're doing. But I told myself that I needed at least 5 years in Oklahoma to get myself right. And then we can move on. 5 years, 5 whole years.
To get it together.
To get it together. And
You're
then we can move on and do the next thing. But I actually, last month, was it last month? Yeah. So I have 2 friends that moved to Brooklyn, New York 2 years ago to kind of start this church and stuff, and they've been praying about people to come alongside with them and to continue the work down there. And so I caught up with them a while back, and they asked me if I'd be interested in moving down there and working with them, and I said yes. And so it's super cool because it's like, because I was so willing to walk away from something that I thought I wanted, what I really wanted, God's better plan for me, came along.
Right.
And it's so cool because I look at who I am now. Like, I really do feel like I'm a healthier me. And so I'm able to step into this knowing that I'm okay, that I'm ready.
Yeah.
Well, I may not feel ready, but I guess it's time.
Yeah.
And so I'll
You're
be
more
moving.
equipped now to be able to go into it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So I'll be moving to Brooklyn, New York in August to work with the Noise Church, and
It's exciting, but
you know, I feel like I just got here. I was telling
You
Kelsey
did,
last time, I
yeah.
was like, I feel like I just rolled up in Oklahoma.
you did. You just came back.
So to be moving again is daunting, but I'm excited though.
Daunting.
It is. But it's gonna be good.
So what are you doing specifically there?
So I'll be helping them kind of like jumpstart their ministry. The community that they have down there in Brooklyn is very creative. So a lot of people that go to that church, they're all like artists and stuff like that, which is my
Your
bread
vibe.
and butter
There you
vibes. So I'll just be helping like cultivate creativity and bringing Jesus into all of that. And
Yeah.
I'm hoping to go down there and just inspire people to use their gift, as well as where I say we, I mean, technically that is my church now. So we
Aw.
are very passionate about helping the community. And so what they've been doing on Tuesdays and Thursdays is partnering with a restaurant down there in Bushwick, which is the neighborhood that the church is in Brooklyn, and pass out free food and just do some street ministry.
That's
So
awesome.
I'll be doing that as well, which I love doing that stuff. And so
Do you feel like this is a better fit than for you specifically, and like purpose for you
yeah.
than your past position?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think before I was trying to mold into what they wanted me to be with that specific ministry. And so I feel like Josh and Danielle have reiterated multiple times that they just want me to be me. And so like to be able to be the person that I feel like I'm called to be,
Right.
and to find my why
Okay,
in that.
why?
I think is super, super cool, and I definitely feel like this is a much more comfortable position for me to walk into, and then also like feeling healthier too.
Right.
Like that just adds.
Like
on
now
to
you're
it.
actually able to do the position.
Mm-hmm.
It's like before,
Yeah.
that wouldn't have been. Like I would much rather lose something that I was like trying to be than the one that's actually for me.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. Are we done with this conversation? Is there more to say?
I mean, I
Did
think
you get everything off your chest?
yes.
Look, he has an attitude problem.
Yeah, I think we've kind of hit
Covered it
everything,
all.
Unless you have any more questions for me.
I don't think so. Untied my shoe. Lost everything. Now what do I say? Thank you for tuning into the Generation Y podcast.